There are some who say the date of May 20th to reopen is too late. One of those is the mayor of Cromwell, Enzo Faenza. Mayor Faenza, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Dennis. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Describe to us, if you could, the impact the pandemic and the quarantine have had on the town of Cromwell.
Well, thank you, Dennis, for that question. As many other towns are facing, just as we are, the mental stress and effects of the actual quarantine, are starting to show and wear on many of the citizens, but especially on the small businesses in our town. Some of the questions that have arisen throughout this time is why some of the big box stores were allowed to stay open, but some of the smaller stores in our downtown area, per se, have not been able to. And of course, please, willing to always follow all the guidelines that have been put in place by the governor. They're just facing some really difficult times.
If you had been governor, what would you have done differently?
So if I were governor, and please, and I want everyone to understand, I believe Governor Lamont has done a fantastic job throughout this process. But what I would have done, at least once we've gotten through that April, so that critical part, I would have liked to see come the beginning of May, some of these smaller businesses have an opportunity to open just like the big box stores. They're suffering. I've spoke again today to another one, begging to try to help to get them open. And even some of the ones that will not be able to open on the 20th, for instance, some of the boutique gyms, some of the massage therapy. For instance, I spoke to a gentleman that owns that massage therapy, and he explained to me how they actually, when they go to school, they train with full PPEs, gloves, masks, suits. So they're suffering. So I would have allowed some of these businesses, especially on the retail side, to potentially open up sooner, and then look for the phase one to include a few other businesses.
In terms of gyms reopening, do you believe that they should be able to reopen right now?
I would like to see the smaller ones, the boutique style gyms where they focus more on small classes where they can actually control the amount of people in there, disinfect after a class. We have 3 or 4 right in the town of Cromwell. I believe there was another story that came out yesterday about several in Portland. They're hurting right now, and they're willing to follow the guidelines, do everything they can to protect themselves and their clients that they're training, but they're hurting right now.
As you know, restaurants can reopen for outdoor dining only with certain restrictions on May 20th. Is Cromwell prepared for that? Do you have restaurants that do not apparently have the land to open?
Yes, that's another great question, Dennis. Thank you. So many of the restaurants have come to us. They're looking to do tents, outdoor seating, and then have tents that will at least protect from if it rains and the weather. So we have been making accommodations. The latest executive order by the governor has given the town that leeway to kind of bypass our zoning regulations. So we are working with residents in our town to help them through this process. But furthermore, I wish on the May 20th, we could have had at least a quarter indoor seating capacity to allow some indoor seating capacity to help some of these restaurants, because that's another industry that's obviously been suffering. They were one of the first ones to be shut down back on March 17th.
As you know, the Travelers Championship will be held, but there won't be any spectators. That is a big economic impact event for the town of Cromwell. What kind of repercussions will you be experiencing because of the lack of all those people coming through your town?
Yeah, it's going to be really difficult for many of those businesses, especially a lot of the restaurants in our town. This is a big event, not just for our town, but obviously for the entire region and surrounding communities. So, already facing the difficulties these past couple months, not having the tournament have spectators is going to hurt them even more. So anything we can do now to try to get them going a little bit, and again, following the guidelines, following the procedures, I think can help them in the future, because it's going to be a long road back. I don't feel that, even starting next week, that the economy is just going to turn right back on and everyone's going to, start, feeling what was prior to that business-wise, prior to the shutdown. So it's going to be hard, very hard. And the loss of the tournament is definitely going to be an issue.
Refresh my memory for a moment, Mayor. Who is the biggest employer in Cromwell?
We have several in town, but we have a new one coming I can't mention yet. But currently, the biggest employee is Covenant Village. They have occupy a good part of our town. They're an assisted living facility. They're one of our largest employers. We also have GKN in town, several manufacturing type businesses. So,
in terms of manufacturing, how has COVID-19 affected those companies?
yeah, many of them are able to operate, thank goodness, and continue their operations. And obviously, they're following the guidelines. And that's one thing I give a lot of credit to the governor. He did allow various industries to continue to operate and do the things that they need to do to continue operations. I just like to see a little bit more happen for the small businesses that are really suffering right now in some of those other areas that they don't have that same opportunity.
And a brief final question, in terms of the town government, police force, fire department, things like that, how has COVID-19 affected them?
Yeah, just like any other city or town, we've been prepared with all the PPEs and doing everything we can to protect them, all our first responders. And, at this time, I just want to thank them all. We have a great group in town, our town employees that are continuing at Town Hall, even though Town Hall is closed to the public. We've been still providing essential services the best we can. And again, to all our first responders, doctors, nurses, and healthcare providers throughout the state, I thank them for the bottom of my heart for everything they've done and are doing. And I wish them all to continue to stay safe.
Mayor Enzo Faenza, we thank you so much for joining us. Best of luck with that recovery in your town.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you for having me.
In a moment, divorces and custody cases, the impact of COVID-19 on our legal system. And I welcome your comments right now on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.